Lyra Solen had never imagined that her life could change with a single letter. The polished envelope, stamped with the seal of the High Council, lay heavy in her hands as she broke it open. Her eyes scanned the elegant script, and she felt the weight of responsibility settle in her chest. She was to marry Kale Varin, a human soldier of remarkable reputation, to strengthen the fragile alliance between Androsia and the human colonies on the fringe of the galaxy. Lyra had always been taught that humans were unpredictable, simple creatures, driven more by emotion than by intellect. She had read reports of their wars, their chaotic governments, and their unrefined technology compared to the meticulous precision of Androsia. And yet, here she was, bound by duty to marry one of their kind. She pressed her lips together and set the letter down. There was no room for hesitation. A Solen did not question duty. The preparations for her journey to meet Kale were swift. Ships were readied, servants and attendants packed their belongings, and Lyra rehearsed the formalities she would need to maintain in front of the human. She would not allow herself to be swept away by emotion. Duty was her guide, and she would honor it, as every Solen before her had. When she finally stepped aboard the sleek transport ship that would carry her to the human's outpost, she felt a flicker of unease. The stars streaked past the viewports in silent streaks of light as the engines hummed beneath her feet. Humans were said to be brave, capable fighters, but there was also talk of recklessness. She hoped Kale Varin would prove to be more disciplined than the rumors suggested. The ship touched down on the human colony with a quiet hum. Lyra stepped out onto the dusty landing pad and saw him for the first time. Kale Varin was not the towering, fearsome warrior she had imagined. He was tall, certainly, with a broad frame honed by years of military service. But there was calm in his posture, and his dark eyes held a quiet intelligence that made her pause. He approached her with a measured step. "Lady Lyra Solen," he said, bowing slightly. "It is an honor to meet you." Lyra inclined her head in return, keeping her voice measured. "And you, Kale Varin. I have heard much about your service." Kale smiled faintly. "I hope the reports were favorable." She allowed herself a brief glance at him, noting the confidence in his stance, the way he carried himself with neither arrogance nor fear. It was disarming, and she quickly reminded herself that admiration was a dangerous distraction. This marriage was duty, not affection. She had no need for sentiment. Their early days together were quiet and formal. Kale introduced her to the human outpost, showed her the routines of the soldiers, and explained the current conflicts threatening the nearby colonies. Lyra observed, noting the differences between Androsian efficiency and human improvisation. Humans were messier, she decided, but there was a spark in them that was undeniably compelling. One evening, after a day of formal introductions and tours, Lyra found herself watching Kale train with his soldiers. The humans moved with precision, but it was a different kind of discipline from Androsian drills. Kale did not command with authority alone, he inspired. Soldiers followed his lead not because they feared him, but because they trusted him. Lyra felt an unexpected pang of respect. She did not yet understand him, but she saw in him a capability that the Androsians could not easily measure. The peace of the outpost did not last. A warning alarm shattered the evening calm. The colony was under attack, and Kale was summoned immediately to lead the defense. Lyra's heart pounded as she followed him, unsure of why she could not stay behind. He did not ask her to accompany him, yet she found herself moving through the corridors beside him, drawn by something she could not name. The battlefield was chaos. Explosions rocked the perimeter, and the screams of frightened civilians filled the air. Kale moved through it all with an ease that seemed impossible, issuing orders, organizing defenses, and shielding those in danger. Lyra watched in awe as he turned situations that should have ended in disaster into opportunities for survival. She noticed the way his eyes constantly scanned the battlefield, taking in every detail, calculating risks, and adjusting strategies in an instant. A group of civilian workers had been cornered by enemy forces, and Kale did not hesitate. He grabbed 2 soldiers and led a rescue operation that moved with fluid precision, saving the trapped civilians without a single casualty. Lyra could not deny it any longer. This human was extraordinary. She had married him out of duty, expecting a formal, possibly distant life. Yet here she was, witnessing courage and skill that surpassed what even the most disciplined Androsian soldiers could achieve. A flicker of something new stirred within her admiration, curiosity. Perhaps even the beginnings of something like trust. As the battle subsided, Kale returned to her side. His uniform was streaked with dust and soot, but there was a calm determination in his expression. "They are safe," he said simply. Lyra nodded. Her voice caught in her throat. You are remarkable," she admitted finally. It was the first time she had spoken to him without the barrier of formality. Kale's gaze met hers, and for a moment, the world outside the outpost seemed to disappear. "Remarkable," he repeated with a small smile. "Perhaps, but it is not me alone. Every soldier here fights with heart, and I simply guide them." Lyra studied him, realizing that his humility made his strength shine even brighter. She had expected arrogance, the sort that often accompanied great warriors. Instead, she found quiet confidence, a steady presence that inspired those around him. The following days were a blur of preparation for further attacks. Lyra traveled alongside Kale to various colonies, observing his leadership firsthand. Each mission revealed another layer of his character: patience with those who struggled, kindness to the injured, and an unshakable belief in the value of life. Humans were indeed different from Androsians, but she found herself increasingly convinced that they were not lesser. They were capable of greatness in ways she had not imagined. One night, under a sky streaked with alien constellations, Kale and Lyra stood on the balcony of the outpost command center. The distant sounds of recovery and repair filled the night. But for a moment, all was quiet. "You expected something else when you heard I was human," Kale said softly, as though reading her thoughts. Lyra glanced at him, surprised by his perception. I suppose I did. I thought humans were simpler." Kale's expression did not falter. "We are different, Lady Lyra, but different does not mean weak. You will see that soon enough." She found herself smiling, a rare and genuine gesture. "Perhaps you are right. I am beginning to see it now." Kale's eyes met hers with a mixture of reassurance and challenge. "Then perhaps you will also see that duty can sometimes lead to something unexpected." Lyra did not answer immediately. She did not yet know what that meant for her heart. But she understood one thing clearly. This marriage, born of obligation, was changing her in ways she could never have predicted. As the outpost prepared for the next inevitable conflict, Lyra felt a strange sense of anticipation. She had come to the human world expecting formality, expecting distance, and yet she found herself drawn to the very human she was supposed to merely honor. Kale Varen was no ordinary soldier. He was extraordinary, and she could feel, with a certainty that both frightened and excited her, that the days ahead would challenge everything she had believed about humans, about duty, and about herself. That night, Lyra watched the stars with a newfound awareness. Somewhere out there, across countless systems, humanity was proving itself in ways the Androsians had never understood. And beside her, Kale rested, a calm presence that promised not only protection, but the possibility of something greater than duty perhaps, if she allowed herself to believe, something like destiny. The war was only beginning, and Lyra knew that the path ahead would be fraught with danger. Yet, for the first time in her life, she felt a spark of hope that it could also be filled with courage, respect, and even admiration for the human she had married. And that spark, small though it was, began to grow into something far more powerful than either of them could yet imagine. The sun rose over the outer colonies, painting the barren landscapes with pale golden light. Lyra Solen stood at the edge of the observation platform, watching the human soldiers train under Kale Varen's careful guidance. The air was filled with the rhythmic thuds of boots on ground, the whir of energy weapons, and the sharp calls of Kale's commands. Lyra had spent weeks observing him now, and each day she found herself more astonished. Kale did not rely on strength alone. His mind worked like a complex machine, analyzing every detail of the battlefield before it even appeared. He anticipated movements, countered attacks before they could form, and inspired confidence in his troops in ways that made even seasoned Androsian officers pause. Today, however, was different. A warning signal flashed across the outpost's command console. An enemy fleet was approaching the colony faster than intelligence had predicted. Kale's expression remained calm, but his eyes sharpened with focus. He did not panic. He had never panicked in Lyra's presence, and she found it impossible to imagine him doing so. "Lady Lyra, you should stay inside," Kale said, his voice steady. "This will be dangerous." Lady Lyra." Lyra shook her head. "I cannot. I need to see. I need to understand." Kale studied her for a moment, then gave a slight nod. "Very well. But stay close." The colony's defenses hummed to life as Kale issued precise orders. Human and Androsian soldiers moved together under his direction, forming defensive lines, activating shield barriers, and preparing heavy artillery. Lyra moved through the command center alongside him, witnessing the coordination that seemed almost effortless. "Reinforce the eastern perimeter," Kale instructed. "Use the terrain to your advantage. Keep civilians in shelters. Don't let fear cloud your judgment." His voice carried authority, yet it was never harsh. Even the most nervous recruits found themselves acting with confidence. Lyra had seen Androsian commanders bark orders, often creating panic. But Kale's leadership was different. It was as if he drew strength from the soldiers themselves, allowing them to shine while guiding them to victory. The first wave of enemy ships appeared on the horizon, sleek, dark vessels bristling with weapons. The colony's defenses opened fire, energy beams slicing through the void. Kale moved quickly from console to console, adjusting targeting algorithms, directing troops, and reading the enemy's patterns. Lyra's heart raced as she watched. She had trained her mind to expect chaos, to remain detached, yet she could not tear her eyes away. Kale moved with precision and calm that seemed almost supernatural. Every order he gave was perfect, every decision flawless. A group of enemy drones broke through the outer shields and began targeting civilian sectors. Lyra froze, but Kale's hand gripped her arm. "Move," he said, and they ran toward the breach. Soldiers hesitated, unsure how to respond, but Kale was already leading the charge. He fought with a combination of skill and strategy that was breathtaking. Not a single move was wasted. Lyra watched as he disarmed opponents, coordinated flanking maneuvers, and protected those in danger. Civilians were evacuated without injury, and the drones fell under his command like leaves in a storm. Once the breach was contained, Kale returned to the command center, brushing dust from his uniform. Lyra's cheeks burned, not from exertion, but from awe. She had married him for duty, expecting formality and distance. Yet she found herself increasingly captivated by the human before her. He was not just a soldier, he was a force of nature, combining intellect, courage, and empathy in a way she had never seen. "You see why humans are underestimated?" Kale asked quietly, glancing at her. Lyra hesitated. "Yes. But not in the way others expect. You inspire them. They follow you because they trust you, not because they fear you." Kale nodded, a small smile on his lips. "Trust is stronger than fear. A soldier who fights out of loyalty will achieve more than one who fights out of obligation." Her admiration grew with every passing day. Kale's approach to battle was unique. He did not see it as mere combat, but as a puzzle to be solved, a situation to be mastered. Yet even as he displayed brilliance on the battlefield, he remained humble, attributing success to teamwork and preparation rather than his own skill. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Kale led missions to secure nearby colonies, repel raiding parties, and negotiate fragile alliances with alien species. Each time, he proved himself not only as a military leader, but as a diplomat and strategist. Lyra observed every detail, recording her thoughts secretly, marveling at the human's abilities. One evening, as they rested in a safe zone on a distant planet, Kale removed his helmet, revealing a face tired but determined. He looked at her with calm intensity. "Lyra, you have seen much. What do you think of humans now?" She considered her answer carefully. I think I was wrong to judge them by reports alone. You are extraordinary, Kale. And the way you lead? It is unlike anything I have witnessed in Androsia. Kale's eyes softened. I am just one among many. But humans, we have potential. Potential that is often ignored by those who fear what they do not understand. Lyra nodded, feeling a mix of pride and something deeper, an unfamiliar warmth that stirred in her chest. She had married him out of duty, yet now she wondered if admiration and respect might lead to something more. She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on the challenges ahead. The following day, Kale received intelligence of a larger enemy fleet, amassing in a nearby system. The humans were outnumbered, and even with Androsian support, the situation was perilous. Kale's calm demeanor did not waver. He studied the maps, considered the enemy's likely strategies, and began preparing his countermeasures. Lyra watched as he planned, noting his meticulous attention to detail. Every possible scenario had been accounted for, every weakness identified. Soldiers who witnessed him in action began to whisper among themselves, calling him the human who sees everything, a title that both intrigued and intimidated allies and enemies alike. When the fleet arrived, Kale's brilliance became evident on a grand scale. He anticipated every attack, redirected enemy forces, and exploited weaknesses in ways that seemed impossible. Lyra's heart pounded as she watched battle unfold from the command center. Energy beams and explosions filled the void, but Kale's instructions ensured that casualties remained minimal. At one point, a group of civilian transports became trapped in the chaos. Without hesitation, Kale led a squadron of fighters into the heart of the conflict, clearing the path and saving hundreds of lives. Lyra could hardly believe what she saw. The human she had married for duty was performing feats that seemed almost miraculous. After the battle, as the fleets withdrew and the skies quieted, Lyra approached Kale. He was exhausted, but his posture remained steady, his expression calm. "You've done more than any soldier should," she said, her voice filled with admiration. Kale shook his head. "I have done what I must. Victory is not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who fought with courage." Lyra felt a surge of respect, stronger than any she had felt before. She realized that this human was not only capable of greatness, but had the ability to elevate everyone around him. His courage inspired loyalty, his humility commanded respect, and his mind outmatched even the most brilliant Androsian strategists. In the following days, stories of Kale's leadership spread across the colonies. Soldiers whispered his name in awe. Civilians celebrated his victories, and Androsian officials began to see him not as a simple human soldier but as a figure who might change the course of the war. Lyra watched it all with mixed emotions, pride, wonder, and a growing sense that her life had shifted in ways she could not have anticipated. One night, as she sat beside Kale under the alien stars, she spoke quietly. "Do you ever wonder if you are meant for something more than this? Beyond being a soldier?" Kale looked at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I do not think of destiny in that way. I think of duty, of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Yet, perhaps greatness is found in the choices we make, not the power we hold." Lyra considered his words, feeling their truth. She had married him for duty, believing it would be a life of formality and obligation. Instead, she found herself witnessing something extraordinary: human potential, courage, and wisdom manifested in one person. As the stars shifted above them, Lyra realized that the human she had once underestimated had begun to reshape not only the battlefield, but her understanding of humanity itself. Kale Varen was not just a soldier. He was a leader, a protector, and perhaps even a force that could inspire the galaxy to see humans in a new light. And as she watched him plan the next mission, standing tall and calm in the midst of chaos, Lyra understood one undeniable truth. Her marriage, once an obligation, was becoming a journey of discovery. She had married him for duty, but she was beginning to see the man beneath the uniform, the human who could rise above any challenge, who could lead, and who could inspire greatness in everyone he touched. The war was far from over, and the threats ahead were greater than anything the colonies had yet faced. But Lyra knew one thing with certainty. Beside Kael Varen, humans were capable of extraordinary feats, and she would witness them all. Her duty had brought her here, but admiration, respect, and something deeper had taken root. The human she married was changing not only the galaxy but her heart, and she could not look away. The stars above the Androsian colonies were unusually bright that night, as if the universe itself had paused to watch what was unfolding. Lyra Solen stood at the edge of the observation deck, her thoughts restless. Ever since the recent battle, she had sensed a change not only in the human she had married, Kael Varen, but in the way others saw him. Whispers of awe and admiration followed him wherever he went, and even the most skeptical Androsian officers began to hesitate before questioning his decisions. It had started subtly, months ago, when Kael led a small human detachment to defend a remote outpost against an overwhelming alien fleet. Reports had claimed it was impossible to survive, let alone triumph. Yet Kael had done both. Soldiers who had witnessed the battle told stories of his uncanny ability to anticipate enemy movements, guiding his troops with calm precision and inspiring them to feats beyond their training. Humans who had once been doubted now carried themselves with pride, and alien allies began requesting his command directly. Lyra had watched it all unfold with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Every time she thought she understood him, Kael revealed another layer of skill, courage, or insight that left her speechless. She remembered the first night she had truly seen him in battle, saving civilians from drones with impossible timing and calculation. That memory now seemed like the first spark of a legend in the making. The latest intelligence brought news of a formidable enemy warlord, whose fleets had been crushing colonies in the outer systems. Androsian strategists feared that even Kael could not turn the tide alone. Yet when he examined the reports, he did not panic. He studied the enemy's movements, analyzed their strategies, and devised a plan that combined both human ingenuity and Androsian precision. Lyra followed him closely as preparations began. He addressed the combined forces of human and alien soldiers, his voice steady and commanding, yet warm with encouragement. "We do not fight for glory," he said. "We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight to prove that courage, intelligence, and heart are stronger than fear and tyranny. Stay with me, and we will succeed not because of one person, but because of all of you together." She watched as the soldier's hesitation vanished, replaced by a unified determination. There was something magnetic about him, something more than skill or reputation. It was his humanity, his ability to inspire trust, loyalty, and hope in those who followed him. Even the alien troops, unfamiliar with human ways, now moved with precision under his command. The battle began at dawn. Kael's fleet engaged the enemy in the dark expanse of space, the void lit by bursts of energy weapons and the glow of shields. Lyra observed from the command deck of the flagship, heart pounding as she watched the dance of war unfold. Every movement Kael made was calculated, almost poetic, as if he could see the outcome before it happened. At one point, the enemy warlord deployed a massive strike force aimed directly at the civilian transports, evacuating nearby colonies. The situation was dire, and even the most seasoned commanders were unsure how to respond. Kael did not hesitate. He personally led a squadron of ships into the heart of the enemy formation, guiding them with exacting commands that ensured minimal losses. Lyra held her breath as she watched him maneuver through enemy fire, his decisions precise and effective. The transports were saved, and the enemy forces were thrown into disarray. Soldiers on the bridge cheered quietly, knowing they had witnessed something extraordinary. Lyra felt a surge of pride and awe she had never experienced before. When the battle ended, Kael returned to the command deck, unscathed but clearly exhausted. His uniform was marked by the dust of space combat, yet his presence was calm, resolute, and commanding. Lyra approached him, unable to hide her admiration. "Kael, you've done something impossible again. You've saved countless lives." He shook his head, humility ever present. "I did not do it alone. Every person here followed with courage. Victory is never one man's achievement. It is the result of unity, trust, and sacrifice. Yet, even as he spoke, Lyra noticed the change in those around him. Soldiers whispered his name with reverence. Alien commanders sought his counsel, and even Androsian officials who had doubted humans were forced to reconsider. The human she had married for duty was becoming something more, something legendary. Rumors began to circulate across the colonies. Some claimed that Kale had been blessed by the ancient war gods, their energy flowing through him to guide and protect. Others said his intellect and intuition were beyond human limits, that he could see into the heart of battle as if the outcome were already known. Lyra dismissed these as superstition, yet she could not ignore the undeniable truth. Kale was extraordinary, and those who followed him believed in him almost as if he were a divine figure. One evening, after another victory secured a strategic colony, Lyra found herself alone with Kale on the balcony, looking out at the stars. "People speak of you as if you are more than human," she said quietly. "Do you feel different?" Kale looked out into the infinite expanse. Thoughtful, "I am still human. I feel fear, fatigue, and doubt, just like anyone else. But perhaps greatness is not about being beyond human. It is about choosing to act with courage, wisdom, and compassion when it matters most." Lyra studied him, realizing that his humanity was precisely what made him so powerful. It was not strength or advanced technology alone. It was his ability to inspire, to lead, and to see value in every life. Her respect for him deepened, and she felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She had married him for duty, yet she now understood that admiration was growing into something far stronger, love tempered by awe. The next campaign would take them to a war-torn system controlled by the warlord himself. Intelligence suggested it was a trap, yet Kale's confidence never wavered. He devised a plan that relied on strategy, diplomacy, and precise timing. Soldiers who once feared the odds now moved with determination, inspired by his unshakable resolve. As the fleet approached the warlord's territory, cosmic anomalies began to appear. Strange energy flares, glowing comets, and bursts of radiant light that seemed to follow Kale's movements. Lyra felt a shiver run through her. The phenomena coincided with his victories, making whispers of divine blessing seem plausible. She had always relied on logic and evidence. Yet even she could not deny the uncanny timing of these events. During the engagement, Kale's brilliance became even more apparent. He anticipated enemy maneuvers with uncanny accuracy, coordinated multi-species forces seamlessly, and turned what should have been disaster into a series of tactical triumphs. Soldiers began calling him the human who defies limits, while enemy forces whispered fearfully of his presence. Lyra watched, astonished, as the human she had married for duty became a figure that transcended ordinary warfare. His leadership inspired courage, his decisions saved lives, and his calm authority gave hope to those who had none. The line between human and legend began to blur. One night, after securing another key victory, Lyra approached Kale privately. "Do you realize what people are saying about you?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I hear the stories, but I do not seek legend. I seek to protect and guide. That is enough for me." She reached for his hand, feeling a deep connection that went beyond duty. "Even so, they are beginning to see you as something more, and I cannot help but feel the same. Not because you are beyond human, but because you choose to be better than anyone could expect." Kale's eyes softened, and he squeezed her hand gently. "Then perhaps it is enough that you see it. That matters more than the whispers of the galaxy." The warlord's territory loomed closer with each passing day, and Lyra understood that the greatest challenges lay ahead. Yet she no longer feared for Kale's ability to lead. She had witnessed his courage, his intelligence, and his humanity. On countless occasions, she had seen the impossible become reality under his command. As she watched him prepare for the coming battle, Lyra realized the truth that had been forming in her heart. The human she had married for duty was ascending into legend. The soldiers who followed him, the civilians he protected, and even the stars themselves seemed to acknowledge his presence. He was becoming more than a commander, he was becoming a symbol of hope, courage, and humanity's potential. Lyra stood beside him as the fleet advanced toward the warlord's stronghold. Feeling pride, admiration, and a stirring of love that she could no longer ignore. Duty had brought her here, but the human before her had given her something far greater: the chance to witness greatness in its purest form. The coming battle would test them all, push them to the limits of endurance and strategy, and perhaps define the course of the galaxy. Yet Lyra was certain of one thing. Beside Kael Varen, humanity could rise, not as a simple species, but as a force capable of legend, and she would be there, bearing witness to the rise of the human who was becoming more than anyone had ever imagined. The void of space stretched endlessly before the fleet, a dark canvas punctuated by the glow of distant stars. Lyra Solen stood on the observation deck of the flagship, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the warlord's armada waited. She could feel the tension in the air, the heavy weight of what was to come. Every colony, every life they had fought to protect, rested on the actions of the human beside her, Kael Varen. Kael walked past her, his expression calm, his posture steady. Months of battles, victories, and sacrifices had honed him into something extraordinary, yet he remained the man she had first met. Humble, focused, and driven by duty. Lyra felt a mixture of awe and pride. The human she had married for duty had grown into a legend, and now the ultimate challenge awaited. The enemy fleet was vast, a sprawling mass of warships designed to overwhelm through sheer numbers. Androsian strategists whispered that defeat was inevitable, yet Kael remained undaunted. He had studied their formations, predicted their maneuvers, and prepared contingencies for every possible outcome. His confidence was not arrogance, it was the certainty born of skill, intelligence, and experience. He turned to Lyra, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Stay close," he said softly. "This battle will decide more than our lives. It will decide the future of every colony in the outer systems." Lyra nodded. She trusted him completely, though fear and anticipation churned in her chest. She had seen him accomplish the impossible before, but the scale of this battle dwarfed anything she had witnessed. And yet, standing beside him, she felt a strange certainty that he would prevail. The battle began as the fleets clashed in the void. Energy weapons flared, shields hummed, and explosions lit the darkness like fireworks of war. Kael's commands flowed smoothly across the fleet, precise and timely. Ships maneuvered with flawless coordination, evading enemy fire and striking with deadly accuracy. Lyra watched, captivated, as his strategy unfolded like a masterful dance. At one critical moment, the warlord unleashed his most powerful weapon, a massive warship capable of obliterating multiple colonies in a single strike. Panic rippled through some of the Allied forces, but Kael remained unshaken. He devised a counterattack, splitting his fleet with impeccable timing and coordinating a strike that neutralized the weapon without a single Allied loss. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. The human she had married for duty was now performing feats that bordered on the miraculous. Soldiers whispered of him as if he were blessed by the war gods themselves, and Lyra understood why. Every decision he made, every maneuver he executed, saved lives, inspired courage, and turned despair into hope. The enemy warlord, realizing his plans were failing, directed a series of devastating assaults at Kael's flagship. The attacks were relentless, testing every defense and every crew member to the limit. Yet Kael remained calm, issuing orders with clarity and precision. Lyra observed how he moved through the chaos, never panicking, always calculating, always protecting his crew and allies. A squadron of enemy fighters broke through the perimeter and headed straight for the civilian transports. Kael acted without hesitation. He led a squadron of his own ships into the heart of the enemy formation, striking with perfect timing and strategy. Civilians were rescued, enemy fighters destroyed, and the tide of the battle shifted decisively. Lyra felt her heart swell with pride and admiration. She had married him for duty, but she now saw him as something far greater, a leader whose courage and skill could inspire entire civilizations. As the battle raged on, Strange phenomena appeared in the void. Bursts of radiant light, energy flares, and glowing comets seemed to follow Kale's movements. Lyra could not deny the eerie coincidence. Soldiers and commanders whispered that the human had become a divine presence, a figure whose mere presence on the battlefield altered the course of events. Lyra felt both wonder and disbelief. She had always relied on logic. Yet even she could see that Kale's influence extended beyond normal comprehension. The final confrontation approached. The warlord's flagship loomed like a dark mountain, bristling with weapons and shields. Kale studied it carefully, analyzing weaknesses and formulating a plan that combined strategy, courage, and flawless timing. Lyra watched, captivated by his calm intensity. Every move he made was precise, every command perfectly timed, every risk calculated. When the engagement began, Kale's brilliance became undeniable. His fleet moved like a single entity under his guidance, anticipating enemy attacks and exploiting weaknesses with uncanny accuracy. The warlord's forces were thrown into chaos, their assaults repelled again and again. Lyra could feel the energy on the deck, the exhilaration of witnessing a human ascend beyond the ordinary. Kale led a daring strike directly into the heart of the warlord's flagship. Enemy defenses faltered under his tactical genius, and the ship's command center was soon within reach. Soldiers followed him with unwavering loyalty, trusting his decisions implicitly. Lyra realized that the legend she had been witnessing was now a reality. The human she had married for duty was ascending into something more. A figure whose courage, wisdom, and humanity elevated him above all others. Inside the warlord's flagship, Kale moved with efficiency and precision, neutralizing threats and securing the command center. The warlord attempted to resist, but Kale's leadership and strategy were unstoppable. With the final decisive strike, the warlord was defeated, his fleet surrendering or fleeing into the void. The battle was over, and the colonies were saved. Lyra watched Kale as he returned to the flagship, calm but radiant with quiet triumph. Soldiers and allies hailed him with reverence, and even the most skeptical Androsian officers bowed in respect. The whispers had become declarations. Kyle Varen was more than a soldier. He was a symbol of hope, courage, and humanity's potential. A living legend. A figure the galaxy would remember. As the fleet regrouped, Lyra approached him. He looked exhausted, yet composed, and she felt a surge of emotion she could no longer contain. Kale, you've done it. You've saved them all. You've become something more than anyone could have imagined. Kale shook his head, humility still evident. I am still human, Lyra. I fight, I lead, I protect. That is all I do. The rest, the legend, the stories, that belongs to everyone who fought alongside me. She took his hand, feeling the steady strength beneath it. Even so, I have witnessed it. I have seen you rise, not just as a soldier, but as a leader, a protector, a symbol. And I am proud to stand beside you. Kale looked at her, and for the first time, his eyes held something more than focus or determination. There was recognition, warmth, and a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they shared. Then we rise together, Lyra, he said softly. Duty brought us together, but what comes next? We shape ourselves. The following days were filled with celebration across the colonies. Kale's name became synonymous with courage, strategy, and hope. Humans were no longer underestimated. Their potential recognized and respected by alien species and Androsians alike. Lyra watched with pride as the human she had married for duty now inspired a galaxy, proving that humanity could rise to greatness when led by courage, wisdom, and heart. Even in private moments, Kale's ascension had a quiet impact. Lyra saw him interact with soldiers, civilians, and allies with patience and compassion. He remained humble despite legend, never seeking glory for himself, always attributing success to teamwork and loyalty. His humanity was the source of his power, and it elevated everyone around him. One evening, Lyra and Kale stood together on the balcony of the flagship, gazing at the stars. "Do you realize what you have become?" she asked softly. Kael smiled faintly, looking at the infinite expanse. "I have become what I had to be. A protector. A leader. Perhaps a symbol. But I am still human. Lyra. The rest is what others choose to see." She reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "Even so, you have shown the galaxy what humans are capable of. You have proven that courage, intelligence, and heart can achieve the impossible. And you have changed my life in ways I never expected." Kael turned to her, eyes reflecting the stars above. "Then perhaps that is the greatest victory of all. To inspire, to protect, and to live with purpose. And to share that journey with someone who understands. That is beyond all else." Lyra smiled, feeling the weight of duty finally give way to something far richer. She had married him for obligation. Yet she now loved him, not just for his skill or courage, but for the humanity, integrity, and greatness that shone through every action. Together, they had faced impossible odds, and together, they had risen. The galaxy was vast, and threats would come again. But Lyra knew that with Kael Varen at the helm, humans and allies alike could face any challenge. She had married him for duty. Yet she had gained a partner, a leader, and a hero who embodied everything the galaxy had doubted about humanity and proved them all wrong. As the stars shimmered above, Lyra rested her head on Kael's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Duty had brought them together. War had tested them, and legend had elevated them. Humanity had risen, not through power alone, but through courage, wisdom, and the choices of one extraordinary man. And Lyra knew, without a shadow of doubt, that she would witness and stand beside the continued rise of the human who had become a battle deity. The galaxy would remember his name, and Lyra would remember every moment she had watched him grow from a soldier to a legend. Together, they had forged a new era, a future in which humanity could rise among the stars, guided by courage, honor, and heart. And so, amidst the endless void of space, Kael Varen stood not just as a hero, but as a symbol, a human who had ascended beyond expectation, inspiring hope, unity, and greatness across the galaxy, with Lyra Solen by his side, not out of duty, but out of love, respect, and shared destiny.